my name is Dr. Norita Ahmad. I am a professor of Information System and Business Analytics at the American University of Sharjah. I am also a director at Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning at AUS. With me today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Salwa Beheiry. Dr. Salwa Beheiry is a professor of civil engineering and sustainable construction project management at the American University of Sharjah, and she joined the university in 2006. Previously, she was a project analyst and consultant in oil and petrochemical in Virginia, USA. We have also conducted interviews with senior managers and leaders and produced podcasts for you to listen to at our 3D immersive experience at wiluae.com. Visit there for a wealth of multimedia resources about women achievers in the Northern Emirates and the UAE. Our research is sponsored by the Sheikh Saud bin Sakar Al Qasimi Foundation for Policy Research. So I would like to welcome Dr. Salwa Beheiry with us today. Thank you so much, Salwa, for joining us. If you do not mind, maybe you can just enlighten us a little bit with your background.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Norita, and I think you guys are doing a very good job with this women in leadership and women achievers, and it highlights some of the good things that are being done so that we can try to be as much of the role models that we try to be to our students and to the younger ladies around. My background is, I like to call it interesting, but I was born and raised in Khartoum, Sudan. Khartoum, Sudan is, interestingly, where the Blue Nile and the White Nile form or meet to form the River Nile. So it's on the Nile confluence, and that's always how I kind of viewed myself going forward. I think of myself as a combination of many things that resulted in who Salwa is today, and I guess I grew up in a relatively easygoing family. So I was the youngest of five by a huge age gap, and you know, when you're the youngest, a lot of people think that you're spoiled, but technically it's just there aren't many expectations of you. The parents are getting older and tired, and they let you kind of run wild. So what happened is, I guess I developed a very kind of independent persona early on, and that helped me as I went through life. So.
Interesting. I mean, I'm also in the family of five, and I'm the youngest as well. So somehow
see,
I can relate
so you
to
can
that.
identify when people say, "Oh, you've been spoiled," and you're like, "No, I've just been left alone."
To some extent, yeah, being independent. Yeah. So maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the significant events that happened in your life.
Okay, I guess the significant or turning points, significant events or turning points. The way I view them as points in time where I've had to make decisions or was triggered into choices that moved my life in a direction that was unexpected at that point in time. So perhaps I can share quickly a few of the turning points. I'm using the turning points as the points in time when I've actually moved continents or moved directions in career. And I think the first one was when I decided that I wanted to go study in the UK. In my family, my two older sisters went into medicine and architecture in Sudan, and my two older brothers followed into my dad's footsteps and went to study in the UK. And so I decided I'm gonna, do what the boys do as opposed to do what the girls did, and I went to the UK. And of course, again, I decided to study construction, which wasn't a very traditional choice. I was the only female in the program at that point, and I think that was a turning point because I made a choice very early on that affected many of my subsequent choices, and it also gave me the ability to get out of my comfort zone.
It's very interesting to me that you mentioned a few points. first is that you basically did not follow the sisters. You followed the boys. Your dad studied in the UK. And also I think what you said is that you want to do something that is non-traditional, which is really interesting to me.
I think I at that point, I was 16, so I wasn't thinking that it's non-traditional. I was thinking it's what I wanted to do. I wanted, I had, one of my older sisters was an architect, so I liked construction, I liked buildings, I liked the fine art and the finer things in life that came with it, but I was good at physics and math, and and I wasn't the best of artists, let's put it this way. I didn't have that talent, so construction for me just seemed natural in a cognitive and an academic way. I didn't think it was that I would go in and be the only female in a cohort of Anglo-Saxon males, right? I didn't think that way, but it turned out that way, and you stayed. I never looked back.
Yeah,
so.
It's amazing that you persisted, you stayed there, and then you finished everything, and then kind of brought you to the next stage of in your life, I guess.
The next stage, I kind of then also, and perhaps that's what I was doing. I was following in my dad's footsteps, as opposed to the typical footsteps. And I had planned that I was going to go into, and that's the second turning point, by the way. I was going to go into my graduate studies in my final year at university. I planned that I was going to pursue graduate studies and MPhil and a PhD in management, and I did all the work for it. Got accepted at my father's alma mater at Brasenose College, and then that summer, as I graduated, my late father gets diagnosed with terminal cancer.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And of course, here I am, right? Like you plan life, and you have, and maybe for all the younger students and females listening out there, life doesn't always go the way that you plan it. And I'm 1 month away from what I had planned, and things have to change. He has to move to the US to go to Johns Hopkins for treatment. We are all needed around him at different times because everybody had whatever they needed to do.
Right.
And so the decision was to defer my acceptance and go to the US. And if my late father had not been diagnosed with terminal cancer, I might have never made it to the US.
I see.
But here I am in my early 20s. Right. And so that is my second turning point, the way I look at it. It was for family reasons, but it pushed me out of my comfort zone, which was the UK at that point in time, to go to the US. And,
right.
And I ended up starting my master's program at GW there, at George Washington. So, yeah.
Wow, in a way.
A different continent, see, every turning point.
Exactly, right? You're moving, and that's always something that drives you there, in a sense. To me, I guess your second turning point is a blessing in disguise to some extent, I guess.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you were to stay in the UK, it might turn out differently. Moving to the States and, I guess, studied at GW is basically, totally different thing.
Yeah, George, it was also the convenience of the location, because my father had to, get treatment at Johns Hopkins, which was in Maryland, and GW was it was a project management program. What's interesting too is that then when I started at GW, it was also, okay, I'm going to do my master's and PhD while I'm trying to help, while my dad is receiving treatment. But at the same time, it ends up being another turning point, is that before I finished my master's, I get offered the job to go into consulting. One of my professors at that point in time was part-timer. He was an adjunct lecturer who worked in oil and gas, oil and petrochem.
I see.
And he said, do you want to continue in a PhD program, or do you want to go and work for oil and gas consulting? And I said, of course, it's an opportunity. I can always come back to a PhD program.
Right.
And that's how I ended up in oil and petrochem.
Okay.
So I guess twists and turns
right.
take us in different directions.
Exactly, but that's also a choice for you, right? You made that decision. You can definitely just stay if you want to stay and continue your PhD. but you choose to actually work and explore whatever it is that is out there, and also take the adventure in a way.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So can you share a little bit about the experience of working, and then, you know, what made you somehow go back and do your PhD?
Okay. So, so at that point in time, as you said, it's a choice, and that's why I call turning points. There are points in time where we make decisions,
Right.
or we make choices. And also, sometimes we feel, you know, it's a tough situation, but it ends up being a blessing to a certain degree. It's not just that you're making a choice. It's always in life, opportunities come up. And we need to take advantage of those opportunities. And it's an art and a science to be able to identify an opportunity and not let it go. So the oil and gas consulting was also interesting, because once again, it's a very male-dominated environment. I was in my early 20s. I am different. I mean, I look different in the oil and gas market, and you know, we're dealing with the Fortune 100 oil and petrochem and so on. It's a certain environment that you have to walk into a room, and you need to gain credibility within the first 30 seconds. If you don't do that, you've lost the audience. And I think it taught me very quickly that I need to do my homework, and I need to make sure that I dot my I's, cross my T's, whatever you want to call it, very early on, and be able to control the room that you stepped into to get what you need to get accomplished. That is consulting in a nutshell for me. You asked also about the other turning point and why I left consulting and came back to academia. So I have a lot of turning points, guys. I mean, you should have known that. I came back to academia. It was also somehow connected to my late father. He passed away in 2002. And so I was in consulting. I was getting the hang of it, been doing that for some time. When you lose somebody close to you, and somebody that you've been very attached to for a very long time, and you've been very inspired by and guided by, you feel that you need to reprioritize your life. And at that point in time, I felt I could not continue to make deep pockets deeper. So I needed to do something that was had more direct impact on lives. And I chose to go back and do a PhD in sustainable construction, or in construction engineering and project management at UT Austin. So that was a choice, also another turning point to quit a paying job and go be a student again. So, but it, you know, I never looked back from that, because and even now, if you told me, would you give up teaching and being in touch with young lives and go back to consulting, I'll tell you, as far as I stand here right now, or sit right here, I won't do that, because I left it for a reason, and I joined academia rejoined academia for a reason. So.
That is really, really inspiring, I mean, to be honest, and to always be one of the first and taking all the challenges. And when you did your PhD in sustainable construction, it's basically...
It's the only woman there, too. But now things are changing. I mean, just recently, in the US, there's major funding for getting 1 million women in the construction workforce.
They're working towards that,
been announced very recently. So things are changing. The thing is, men and women are the same, ultimately. We
would love to think about
but we're put in different situations, and we all have to deal with them, I guess. So.
Well, that is, again, like I said, it's really inspiring. I'm hoping that all the young girls out there, or any women that's looking for something to hang on to, or, you know, to get inspired, I'm pretty sure that people can relate to that. So thank you again, Salwa, for joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.